So you're our ballistics guy. Are all bulletproof vests made of 50-page speeches?
No. Hey there. Welcome to the Musers, the podcast, another episode. This is episode 41. I'm Gordon Keith.
George Dunham.
I'm Craig Miller.
That's right. Three guys have been doing a job together for a long time, and we're doing this job. We're going to do it right.
Done it.
The right way. We're very excited because we now have merchandise. We've had so many of our podcast listeners ask about merchandise, and we now have it. You can go to themusers.com. That's on your internet web computer box that you have. You can go there and you can get T-shirts. There's mugs, tumblers. There's also pennants. And, you know, we are the only podcast that supports pennants.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as we know, we're the only podcast that you can actually get a pennant of that podcast with the podcast logo on it. It's a great thing to hang up in your room. It's wonderful. Themusers.com.
You know, I was out and about this weekend, and everybody that I saw out in public was wearing some kind of Musers merch, a hat, a T-shirt, a sweatshirt. Everybody.
It's huge.
It was incredible.
It's huge. We're almost sold out, but there's still a few more left. If
you act now,
there is a tremendous sense of urgency that I'm trying to impart to you.
Oh, yeah.
So go and pick up some Musers merch. And the first person who bought merch on our website, do you know that? I don't know if you guys know the stat.
I don't think so.
I'll give you a hint. In his previous job, he was known as number 8.
No way.
Yeah. Troy Aikman, last week's
There's
guest
truly
on the podcast.
no way Troy went to the website and got Muser merch.
Maybe he had an assistant do it. I don't know. Perhaps he had an assistant do it. Okay, before we get into this very special edition of the Musers, the podcast, we do want to look into our Musers mailbag. Hit the theme song. We don't have a theme song.
Let's get one.
We should.
Get a mailbag theme song.
Maybe we will award one of these to the P1 podcast Muser of the Week. What do we call it? Muser
Letter of the Week.
Letter of the Week thing. All right, first one comes to us from...
By the way, I want a theme song for this segment, and I want it to be set to the theme of Hawaii Five-0.
It's the first tune that came to mind.
Isn't that a violation of something?
Probably.
Maybe, but... Well,
maybe the greatest theme song ever. Why not just copy it?
It's the Musers mailbag. We're getting lots of mail. It's the Musers mailbag.
Boy, he's already written it over here.
It writes itself,
You're
really.
better than AI. First one comes to us from Jennifer. She says, long-time listener. And I'm going back and listening to all of your episodes and enjoying them one by one, which we encourage people to do. Go back in the library. I just got done with episode 29, which was entitled Appreciation of Women. And you guys made me crack up when you were talking about taking home the babysitter and the uncomfortableness of dad taking home a teenage babysitter and how awkward that is, and dad's scooching over as far as he can get from her. And
yes. And what do you say? You don't want to talk too much, but you don't want to
conversation. You don't want to appear anything. Don't want to appear unfriendly, but you certainly don't want to appear too friendly.
Right.
She said it brought back many memories from my teenage years of silent rides with awkward dads. As a recovering babysitter myself, I removed all of that from my husband once we had kids. I simply became the driver to take the babysitter home. It never put my husband in an awkward position, and the car ride was never riddled in silence.
That's the play.
Yeah, why haven't families thought of this before?
I don't know.
I think we eventually got to that after maybe I made some complaints of, hey, we've got to do something else. Have her parents come pick her up or something, because this is just too weird. Then I'm all of a sudden I'm looked at. Oh, really? Why is it weird?
Why is it weird?
It's just weird.
I'm not saying it is weird. There's nothing. Wait. What were you thinking was making it weird?
I wasn't thinking.
There's nothing in my mind. There was nothing in my mind. I swear.
You guys in such a no-win.
She says, I can't believe you three gents couldn't come up with that easy fix. And she said, Craig, you can now use my easy solution. So here's an example of a listener giving back to us.
Great. Thank you for that.
She said, love the
Unless
episodes.
she's already in college, then maybe give her a ride home.
Oh, come on.
I'm just saying she's not like 15.
Just
and it's not as uncomfortable. You can have an adult conversation.
Stop making things weird. And then this one comes to us from P1 Chris. He wants to talk about our UAP theories. We talked about aliens during our space episode that we had. And he said, I recently read a book that I think you'd really find thought-provoking. It's called Pure Human by Greg Braden. Not
Greg Brady.
No.
I remember him.
He is a scientist known for bridging modern science with ancient wisdom, and he had a crush on his stepsister, Marcia. Wait, whoa.
Okay.
Maybe you were right. He said the basic premise is kind of alarming. We might literally be the last generation of true, unaltered humans. Braden argues that as AI, gene editing, and implanted tech keep advancing, we're on a path to becoming something more hybrid than human. And in the process, we're losing the things that actually make us human, like empathy and intuition, the ability to love and forgive. And so Braden suggests that these UAPs, these unidentified anomalous phenomenon, is it or nam?
Phenomena.
Phenomena. Phenomena could be our own descendants, future humans returning to our timeline because they've lost that essence of what makes us human. So they're coming back to study pure humans to see how they can recapture it for themselves. And Braden argues that the year 2030 is the tipping point for modern humanity.
Interesting.
That's when we replace our biology with external technology and tips us into this downward slope of the soulless state that he attributes to these visiting future beings. So
Okay.
that's
Interesting theory.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just like Fruit Loops.
And okay, George is going to his happy place, his safe space right now.
I'll talk about it with you.
So I'm going to say that Jennifer is our P1 letter of the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even
that
though
solution.
she doesn't. Now that we have merch, are we going to send merch to anybody?
No, let's not go that
Yeah,
far.
Okay, let's not go crazy. Okay, the topic this week is very relevant because over the weekend we had an incident that happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in which a man who I guess was trying to assassinate someone. It's not clear. He hasn't written specifically as to who was his target.
Sounds like his goal is a group of people.
But basically, this was an attempt on the administration and the presidency, the presidential administration, who Donald Trump was inside the room at the Correspondents' Dinner. This guy rushes. The facts are still being discovered because we're recording this shortly after the incident. But he gets past some security, and he eventually was apprehended, and no one was shot. Thank goodness. No one was shot and killed.
Yes.
There was a law officer who was shot in the vest, but fortunately his vest saved his life. So it's a fascinating topic, the topic of presidential assassinations. We've had 4 in our country. Can you name the 4 presidents? I know you can name 2 that have been killed by an assassin's bullet in our nation's history.
I know James Garfield because I used to live on Garfield Street, so I learned a lot about him. JFK, of course. Abraham Lincoln, of course.
Abraham Lincoln was the first one, 1865. Then Garfield in 1881.
And McKinley
JFK at 63. Yeah, and McKinley, 1901. They all were killed. Now, only one of them, Kennedy, was the only one that died immediately. You think of Abraham Lincoln getting shot in the back of the head, he would have passed away immediately, but he actually lived for about 9 hours. He was taken to a house, I think, across the street, and he never regained consciousness, but he died later. The other 2 guys, McKinley and Garfield, the ones that most people don't remember, they both died of infection, basically, after the gunshot, after receiving the gunshot wound. They didn't really die from the gunshot wound, but the complications from it.
Where were they shot? What part of the body?
I think in the torso.
Okay.
Yeah. McKinley died 8 days after the shooting from gangrene. Do you call it gangrene or gangrene? I always say gangrene.
Gangrene is the Eagles' defense?
That was the Eagles' defense. That's how I know it.
Yeah, that's what I say.
Gangrene.
That's how you know it. So he dies 8 days after the shooting. Now, Garfield died much later. He died over 2.5 months after he was shot from infection because the lead doctor on his medical team wouldn't use clean instruments when probing the wound, and he gets horribly infected, and he dies of that.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started watching that Death by Lightning. Have you guys seen any of that?
No, I've heard it's good.
I've watched the first couple episodes, and it's really good. Yeah, leading up to that point.
And as I started going back and researching presidential assassination attempts, it's shocking to me that only of the ones who did not die, those 4 that did die of gunshot wounds, only one president has been shot and survived, which was Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember that day.
In 1981. Yeah, I was a kid during that time, and man, that was on 24 hours a day in our household. My parents watching the news coverage of that.
Now, that's shot and survived as a sitting president.
As a sitting president, right, yeah.
Because Trump, when he was shot...
We've had 2 former presidents
campaign trail.
Shot, and they were both former presidents shot on the campaign trail to run again. Do you know who those 2 were? Of course, Trump being one.
I don't.
We're going to get to it.
Okay.
Because it's a wild story
of
the other former president who was going to run for president again and got shot.
Okay.
But yes, 2 former presidents have been shot while on the campaign trail to run again.
Do you guys remember where you were when you heard the Reagan assassination attempt news? I was in a school assembly in high school in Oklahoma City, and I can't remember what we were in there for. It was some assembly, and every class was in the auditorium, and I remember his name was Father Vermilion. And he came
that's
in,
a made-up name.
That is.
From like an 1880s Victorian novel.
He came in and he interrupted the assembly, and he said, "I have an announcement to make. President Reagan has just been shot." And the whole assembly went, and, there were gasps and a couple screams probably. He made it sound like shot and killed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he went he's been taken to a hospital or something, so we're going to adjourn the assembly. And I think they sent us all home because it happened.
That sounds right.
If I'm not mistaken, in my timeline,
middle of the day,
1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, something like that. We had just been released if you were in any sort of sport, and I was a sophomore and I was on the golf team. So we had we were just let out. My mom gave me a ride home, and we heard it on the radio.
Okay.
And it was a Monday because I do believe the national championship game was that night.
Wow. Okay.
Because didn't Reagan say, all in all, I'd rather be in Philadelphia? Well, they were playing the
I think that's an old W.C. Fields line, though, isn't it?
Yes, I think he did steal it. But, yeah, and I remember going home and watching the coverage and watching live as I think it was Dan Rather pronounced his press secretary, James Brady, had died.
Mm-hmm. Because he was the most severely injured.
Yes.
And I just remember that footage of seeing Brady. He was laying face down on the pavement on that sidewalk, which, oddly enough, outside the hotel where Donald Trump was, the attempt on his life happened over this past weekend.
Same one.
Wow.
It's the same hotel.
Dang.
That's
so
wild.
they need to stop taking presidents to that hotel.
Yes.
And just from what I remember, that was really close. I mean, Reagan literally dodged a bullet. I mean, it hit him, but just another centimeter, and he doesn't make it.
Yeah. So let me get to my Reagan thing. I had that later in the stack, but
sorry to jump it.
We can move it up if you want to.
We jumped the route
because there's a lot of stuff in the Reagan attempt that has to do with where we podcast from, Dallas, Texas. Because John Hinckley Jr., the attempted assassin, was from here. Mm-hmm. Graduated high school from Clayton Kershaw High School, Highland Park.
Known as Highland Park.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford, Clayton
They will
Kershaw,
one day rename it Kershaw Stafford High School.
Yes, they will.
They should.
And he bought his gun at Rocky's Pawn Shop here in Dallas. So how crazy is that we've had 2 presidential assassination attempts, one of them successful, that have Dallas ties.
Dang.
I know.
Creepy.
very creepy. And John Hinckley, they say he was a normal kid when he was at Highland Park High School, very unassuming, quiet. His sister was really, really popular. She was like a head cheerleader, was older than him, so he kind of lived under her shadow. But she was very, very popular. He was just kind of blended into the woodwork.
and didn't go crazy until later. After he graduates high school, he goes to Texas Tech and was a student there off and on. He tried to be a Red Raider for about 7 years, and then ultimately just said, "That's all right. I ain't gonna finish."
There's a lot of Red Raiders that do that.
But one of his times where he was taking a break from going to Tech, he moved out to Hollywood because he wanted to be a songwriter. And so he tried to be a songwriter out there, and he wrote these letters back to his family detailing all his woes and just, misfortune, and always begging them for money. But he told them often about this girlfriend that he had. Her name was Lynn something. I can't remember her last name. So he's always talking about her in the letters. Turns out she was a complete fabrication who lived only in his mind.
Oh, boy.
While he's out in Hollywood, he sits in a theater one night and watches the 1976 movie Taxi Driver, Martin Scorsese film, right?
I've never seen that, by the way.
I'm getting all choked up. You haven't seen it? It's kind of creepy. Anyway, De Niro plays this Vietnam vet who's alienated from society, who then gets infatuated or has this weird relationship with this 12-year-old sex worker played by Jodie Foster.
Wow.
And that's really what launched Jodie Foster's career. She'd been in other things before, but that was a huge movie for her. And John Hinckley Jr. sees this film, and he really identifies with De Niro's character, Travis Bickle. And so he gets obsessed with Travis Bickle, starts dressing like him, talking like him, keeping a diary just like Bickle did. And he also develops the obsession with Jodie Foster, the actress who played the character that Travis Bickle was interested in. So that starts his obsession with Jodie Foster.
That whole thing must have freaked out Jodie Foster. When that
Absolutely.
happened. Yeah.
Because by the time the Reagan assassination attempt happens in 1981, she's at Yale University. She eventually goes to Yale University because she kind of quits Hollywood, decides I want to go to college because she had been a child actor and had never had a normal life, and she wanted this normalcy. So she goes to Yale. Well, he, because he's obsessed with her, reads that she goes to Yale. So he asks his parents, "Hey, listen, I really want to take a creative writing class at Yale.
Go to Yale.
Will y'all send me some money?" So he moves up to Connecticut, and I think he takes the writing class, or there's different reports of whether he actually enrolled or not. But he starts writing her these letters and poems and notes, and he doesn't just mail them to her. He slips them under her door.
Whoa.
She ignores them because she's like, just don't give it oxygen, just ignore him.
Well, that's one thing to get in your mailbox, but the slip
under her door.
Man, that's...
But she's a star. She probably gets notes and things all the time.
So she just kind of throws them away or puts them aside, doesn't engage with them. Well, that just makes him get more intense, and he starts sending more and more to her. Then he starts calling her. So he'd call her on the phone. "You know who this is? I'm the one who sent you all these letters." He's doing that. So she eventually turns it over to the dean and says, "I don't know who this guy is." He gets this idea that he is going to impress her. And this is the famous line from the Reagan assassination, is doing something to impress Jodie Foster, because that is the exact reason that John Hinckley Jr. used for doing what he did. So he gets on a bus I think this was in L.A., he gets on the bus and then travels to Washington, D.C. in March of 1981. He gets a hotel room, and he writes Jodie Foster one last letter. Should I read it?
Oh, gosh.
Sure.
"Dear Jodie," hit Ashokan farewell, just like the Ken Burns Civil War documentary. "Dear Jodie, there's a definite possibility that I will be killed in my attempt to get Reagan. It's for this reason I'm writing you this letter now. As you well know by now, I love you very much. Over the past 7 months, I've left you dozens of poems, letters, and love messages in the faint hope that you could develop an interest in me. Although we talked on the phone a couple times, I never had the nerve to simply approach you and introduce myself. Besides my shyness, I honestly did not wish to bother you with my constant presence. I know the many messages left at your door and in your mailbox were a nuisance, but I felt that it was the most painless way for me to express my love to you.
Do you think this is a Confederate soldier or Morgan Freeman?
It's kind of the love
It's a
child.
hybrid.
Yes. I feel good about the fact that you at least know my name and know how I feel about you. And by hanging around your dormitory, I come to realize that I'm the topic of more than a little conversation, however full of ridicule it may be. At least you know that I'll always love you.
Man.
Jody, I would abandon this idea of getting Reagan in a second if I could only win your heart and live out the rest of my life with you, whether it be in total obscurity or whatever. But he says that he's going on with this plan, and he can't wait any longer to, quote, impress you.
So did she get that before the attempt or found it after?
He didn't mail it. He left it in his
man.
hotel room and then walked over to the Hilton there in Washington, D.C. and lie in wait for Reagan. And when Reagan finished his speaking engagement, he comes out. Hinckley opens fire with this .22 pistol. So he chooses this very small caliber for his weapon, which that no doubt helped this situation because it was a very small bullet. So he opens fires 6 times in 1.7 seconds. So he basically just unloads crazy. Doesn't even really re-aim, reacquire target or anything like that. He's just pulling the trigger as fast as he can. First bullet hits James Brady in the head, the White House press secretary, and he's the one that's seen face down on the concrete out there on the sidewalk. The second shot hits a police officer. The third shot misses, but the fourth one hits the Secret Service agent, Tim McCarthy, who was the guy who threw himself in front of Reagan to take the bullet. The fifth bullet hits the armored glass of the limousine, and then the sixth bullet was the one that ricocheted off the side of the limousine and hit Reagan in the chest under his arm. As Reagan was being pushed into the back of the open door of the limousine for his protection, the bullet bounced off the limousine and then went up under his arm, kind of in the armpit area, and into his chest. And Reagan didn't know that he had been hit. They're in the limousine speeding away, and Reagan is thinking that he broke a rib or something when he landed like on the transmission hump or something in the car, something in the landing. And they didn't know he was hit until he started coughing up blood.
Wow.
And they went, of course, straight to the hospital. And they say that by the time they got him there, he was minutes from death.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
And he had some very famous lines, of course, in that Reagan way that he had. I'm sure George knows them all.
I hope you're all Republicans.
He said that to the doctors before he gets operated on. Or whatever.
Great line.
And then what did he say to Nancy?
I forgot the duck.
Yeah. Sorry, honey, I forgot the duck. But Reagan lives and becomes the only president that we've had that survived the gunshot wound.
I was a kid in high school, and Craig was too, and you were even younger than us. I remember being really just upset. I didn't think we just knew that he was in surgery, and I didn't think he was going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, and I was totally bought into the whole Reagan thing. And, I've learned more since in the last 40 years.
What does that mean? He was learn more.
Well,
he wasn't perfect.
Back then, as a kid, you looked up as the president of, my God, that's our president.
Yeah.
And
kids wanted to grow up to be presidents.
Yeah. And it was really upsetting.
Am I not mistaken? Did Hinckley get released in the last few years? Is he a free man?
For it.
No, you're correct. He is now a free man.
Yes, I thought he got released.
I thought they denied it again.
Now, okay, so James Brady, by the way, just to follow his story, the guy that was shot in the head and was permanently disabled, the left side of his body was paralyzed, and went on to advocate for gun control, and people may know the name Brady Bill. That's named after James Brady. He died from his injuries 33 years later, and when he died, they listed on his death certificate homicide 33 years afterwards.
So how could Hinckley, just for that crime,
I don't know.
How could he be walking the streets now, much less the attempt on a president?
Because he was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
So he's been under psychiatric care for 40 years until he was released?
Until he was released, yes. He was not
in prison.
In a mental hospital in St. Elizabeth's Hospital. And the judge ruled in 2016 that he was no longer a threat to himself or others. He was released from that psychiatric care. Now, he had a lot of conditions when he was released in 2016. He had to live full-time with his mom. He had to work at least 3 days a week, and he had to record his browser history.
Wow.
Work? Who's going to hire him?
I don't know. That's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want him to be the hostess at your casual dining facility?
Right.
But then, fast forward, he also, by the way, could not contact the Reagan, Brady, or Foster families, another condition of his release, and he couldn't watch or listen to violent media. He couldn't access pornography, and he couldn't speak to the press.
I wonder if Jodie Foster ever talked about how weird that must be, knowing he's out there again.
Glad you asked that. She only addressed it once. She only addressed the assassination and the whole Hinckley thing once, and she wrote a piece for Esquire, I think way back in the 80s, and wrote this. And, poor Jodie Foster, she's traumatized by all this, and she hates that her name's tied up with this madness because of this insane dude. And I'm assuming she was against him being released.
Yeah.
I know that the Reagan family was divided on it. There were some of Reagan's kids who felt like, well, the process worked. He served time in the mental facility. We believe in getting mental help for people who need it. His daughter, Reagan's daughter, did not want any of that, said this guy to be locked up for forever.
Absolutely.
But, Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity, based in part on several experts, and he had a whole litany of mental conditions that they diagnosed him with. One of them because he thought that he was an amalgamation of Travis Bickle and John Lennon. He felt he was both of those people.
Wow.
He had just a mess of disorders. Anyway, well, he was released fully in September of 2021. Gosh. Unconditional release. That's when it was ruled on, and he was fully released in June of 2022. And he did an interview with CBS at that time, expressed remorse for his actions, apologized to the Reagan and Brady families as well as Jodie Foster. And then he said, go listen to my songs on YouTube. And he has a YouTube channel and posts his songs up there.
Wow.
And then when there was that attempted assassination on Trump on the campaign trail where he was hit in the ear with a bullet, Hinckley tweeted, now the fully sane Hinckley, right?
Mm-hmm.
No longer an amalgamation of Travis Bickle and John Lennon and all this. He's fully recovered.
He's got access to social media.
He tweeted, violence is not the way to go. Give peace a chance.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
So
still, I don't want to hear that message from him.
Right.
Sorry, dude.
Nobody
You ought
else
to be
thinks
behind
that's
bars.
as weird as I do.
I don't want to hear it
He
either.
quotes
Lennon.
John Lennon.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not John Lennon anymore, but
Yeah.
here's my message of peace.
It's still swimming around.
It's
up
still
there.
in there. It's still knocking around.
It's so bizarre.
So, yeah.
Wow.
And he wrote a letter. Here's a copy of the letter that he wrote to one of our broadcast friends, Mike Reiner, and the KZEW crew. He wrote a letter to them because when you're in jail, that's all you do is you just respond to letters because you're so bored.
You ask about the Rangers rotation or what?
He says, that, hey, I remember KZEW. It used to be the station I listened to while living on McKinney and Big D. So you guys can be the official John Hinckley information station.
God. Because they wrote him.
They wrote him, and then he wrote them back. He said, I want to tell you a few things. Number one, I like new wave music, especially Devo, since I co-wrote a song on their new album. The song is called I Desire, and I want you to play it 58 times each day.
Okay.
That's heavy rotation there, boy.
Wow.
Number. And then he said, I also listened to the song Heroes by David Bowie when I was stalking Carter and Reagan. So the other part of the story is that he originally was stalking Carter.
Wow.
But then he had the election, and then Reagan, becomes president. And then he just turned his attention to Reagan. He said it got me in a strange mood. So that was his amp up music.
Wow.
That he played and listened to. And then he said that he wished that he didn't make Rocky's pawn shop so notorious. He said I could have bought the gun anywhere. But he said Dallas is still my favorite city, and I plan to go there when I get out of the hospital.
So he could
John
be here
Hinckley
now.
Jr. Yeah, he could be. Do you know the first
hoping that Shoddy will get the Cowboys back in a Super Bowl?
First presidential assassination attempt, 1835. It's Andrew Jackson, 7th president. And he is
Didn't he chase after the guy or something?
Yes. This is crazy, okay? Andrew Jackson is 67 at this time. So that's old back then.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you Andrew Jackson led a hard life.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of drive-thrus. He hit a lot of drive-thrus and didn't take care of his health, probably smoked. The guy that tried to shoot him was Richard Lawrence, who was an unemployed house painter.
Okay.
The guy was born in England around 1800. His family comes to America when he was 12. They lived in Virginia, described as a nice, normal guy. But then his behavior starts getting weird around November of 1832. At that time, his personality and outward appearance changes dramatically. He grew his mustache long. That was the first thing he did. He used to dress conservatively, and now he starts buying these expensive, flamboyant outfits, which he would change 3 or 4 times a day. He would have 4 costume changes a day. He would stand in the doorway of his home for hours and gaze into the street. He began to believe that he was King Richard III, who died in August of 1485.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay. Got a lot of red flags here.
The neighborhood kids would jokingly address him as King Richard, which pleased him.
They were his loyal subjects.
Yes, he didn't realize they were making fun of him.
Behold, I'm here to leadeth the team.
He starts, that's your old English?
It sounded like
from the deep south, though.
That was King Henry from the State Farm commercial.
Oh.
Sorcery!
So he starts getting paranoid. He gets hostile towards others. He threatens to kill a maid. He gets verbally and physically abusive to his family and his sisters. He starts becoming a nightmare. So at his trial, after the assassination attempt, they start describing his bizarre behavior. They said that several people testified that he would engage in nonsensical conversations with himself.
That sounds like you.
I know. I'm going to write some of these things down. I've seen some of these
Others
things.
stated that he would degenerate into laughing and cursing fits.
That sounds like you. Plus add in all your costume changes every day.
You have cussing Tourette's all the time.
So weeks leading up to the assassination, this guy starts watching President Jackson. And he was often seen sitting at his print shop muttering to himself.
That's you.
Oh.
I don't own a print shop.
You sit in your
That's
typewriter.
Typewriters.
Yeah.
You got typewriters.
So the day of the assassination, January 30th, 1835, he is seen sitting at his paint shop with a book in his hand while laughing. And then suddenly he stands up, slaps the book closed, and says, "I'll be damned if I don't do it."
What was he reading?
I don't know. I don't know. So later that same day, he goes, you have President Jackson who's attending this funeral at the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol. It was the funeral for a South Carolina representative. So Lawrence, the assassin, originally planned to shoot Jackson as he entered the service, but he couldn't get close enough to him. So by the time Jackson leaves the funeral, Lawrence, the assassin, had found this hiding place behind a pillar and where Jackson would pass by.
There was no Secret Service back then, was there?
I guess not.
No.
Yeah, we've been around for 60 years as a country and no attempts yet.
Yeah, this is
on
the
our
first
president.
attempt.
Good. Yeah.
So as the president walks by, Lawrence, he steps out, points his first pistol at the president's back, and he fires, and it misfires. Well, that gets the attention of the president. So Andrew Jackson turns around, pulls out his walking cane, raises it above his head, and charges the assassin.
Okay. I've seen a drawing of this.
Yeah, it's a famous drawing.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
you've seen it.
Yeah.
So Lawrence then pulls out another pistol and points it at Jackson and pulls the trigger as Jackson is running at him with this cane. Pulls the trigger and it misfires again.
Off.
What are
And
the odds?
later they calculated the odds. It was like 1 in, I don't know, 200,000 or 1 in 2 million, something crazy high that both of these things would malfunction. But that allows for the president to then beat the holy hell out of his assassin with a walking cane.
He did.
Yeah.
Wow.
As he's doing this, members of the crowd jump on Lawrence and tackle him to the ground. One of the members of that crowd did it particularly well. Davy Crockett, the Tennessee congressman,
Wow, really?
was the guy who tackles the assassin of Andrew Jackson
How
after Andrew
crazy.
Jackson had beat him with a
Gosh,
walking
I don't think
cane.
I'd heard that before.
Isn't that crazy? So Lawrence goes to trial, and you know who the prosecuting attorney was that was prosecuting this crime?
No.
Sam Houston.
I'll give you a hint. He later went on to write a hit song for Carl Lewis, the famous runner.
Oh, Francis Scott Key.
Oh,
Francis Scott Key, indeed, was the prosecuting attorney.
Wow. What an
Throw them all.
insane story, everything about it.
Yeah, completely crazy. And it was all because he thought that he was Richard III, and he felt like Andrew Jackson was doing something with the banks that was going to make it to where he wasn't going to be repaid his money as Richard III.
Huh.
Jeez.
And he was found not guilty by reason of insanity, just like John
That even worked
Hinckley.
way back then.
And he was sent to the Government Hospital for the Insane, which was later renamed St. Elizabeth's Hospital, where John Hinckley spent his time.
What the heck?
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Man,
So
I had
it-
no idea that defense was around in the 1830s.
Yeah.
I just figure he got hung.
It used to be called
Or
the
hanged.
Government Hospital for the Insane, but to soften it, they called it St. Elizabeth's for the Crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they missed it on the last part, but yes. And they later looked at his weapons, and they were particularly notable. They were vulnerable to moisture, and it was a
Had been shot
very
in a
humid
while.
day, and that
Hmm.
contributed to the misfires that happened to save the president's life that day.
Wow.
Oh,
Had no idea about any of that stuff.
no. Especially the Davy Crockett thing.
So we mentioned that there was another president other than Donald Trump who was running for president again and was shot on the campaign trail.
I think I may know who it is.
Who is it?
Was it Theodore Roosevelt?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. This
Who, in
this
a lot of
comes back to me.
ways, was the biggest badass to ever be president.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at his personal life, I mean, he was like a total he-man and a man.
Real top heavy, but yes.
Yeah, and
total-
had the stupid mustache and the little
glasses.
He was
John
out
Lennon.
John Lennon with the glasses. But yeah, so October 14th, 1912, Teddy Roosevelt, he's running for what would have then been an unprecedented third term under the Bull Moose Party, which is
Gotta bring
another
that back.
confusing party.
Such a great name.
So I thought they were non-consecutive terms, but I guess this was a third consecutive term he was running for.
Maybe.
It just says
I
an
don't know.
unprecedented third term. I thought
Okay.
he'd been out. Anyway, we'll track that down.
Maybe that was before we
That
had the
infor-
rule you couldn't do that. Maybe.
That information wasn't available to this reporter at the time of the
That's
reporting.
okay. You're rolling.
Yeah, we changed that after FDR, right?
Yeah, because it used to just be a tradition set by George Washington. He said, I don't think that any guy should be president more than 2 terms, and so everyone kind of honored that.
Mm-hmm.
Then Teddy Roosevelt, of course, runs for this and then doesn't win it, but FDR does.
But if you're
FDR
in a-
elected 4
If you're in
times.
a world war,
So,
that hankety clankety guy who's over there.
okay, that's George going into Norm Macdonald. So, October 14th, 1912, Teddy Roosevelt set to give a speech at the Milwaukee Auditorium there in Wisconsin. And there he crossed paths with a mentally ill saloon owner named John Schrank.
Wow.
Could you have named the attempted assassin of Teddy Roosevelt?
There's no way.
No, but you have to be right though, because if this were consecutive, he'd be a president at this moment that we're
Right.
talking about.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it was
there
right.
you go. Yeah.
So Schrank had become convinced that Teddy had assassinated William McKinley in 1901.
Okay.
And so Schrank waited with the crowd, and when Roosevelt appeared, he fired at Roosevelt with a Colt revolver that he had. So his aim was true. The bullet hits Roosevelt in the chest, but it passes through Roosevelt's thick overcoat, his eyeglasses case, which I think was made of metal, and then it hit his 50-page speech that the president
50 pages.
had taken and doubled over and tucked inside his pocket. So that slows the bullet down as it enters Roosevelt's chest.
Wow.
But Roosevelt is shot in the chest in front of this whole crowd, and he shouts, "Don't hurt him. Don't hurt him." Because they're all attacking Schrank at this point. He yells, "What did you do it for?" asking Schrank. Schrank doesn't say anything. And so Roosevelt orders him, to be taken away. And then Roosevelt insists on continuing his speaking engagement as planned. They're all like, "No, Mr.
Wow.
President, former president."
Mm-hmm.
Still call him Mr. President.
Yeah.
He says, Roosevelt says to the crowd, "Friends, I'll ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I've just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." Yeah, everyone goes crazy. Roosevelt then unbuttons his vest to show his bloody shirt. And then he says, "Fortunately, I had my manuscript. I was going to make a long speech, and there's where the bullet went through, and it probably saved it from going into my heart." So aides are then, after he says this, aides are saying, "Hey, let's get you to the hospital." And he says, No, I want to keep speaking. I'll give an abbreviated version of this 50-page speech. With the bullet in his chest, with him bleeding from the bullet
Okay, yeah,
wound.
he's our all-time badass.
Yeah.
president.
And he says, I'll make some quick remarks. He then goes on to speak for 90 minutes
Wow.
to the crowd until he finally agrees to go see a doctor.
Wow.
You think his press secretary is giving him the signal like, "Come on, let's speed
Wrap
it up.
It's
Just wrap
blood
it
in your
up."
boots. There's blood in your boots now. Let's go ahead. Let's keep it going. In the end, Schrank pleads guilty. He lived out the rest of his days in a state asylum. So also he, I guess, eventually gets into an insane asylum. Teddy Roosevelt loses his bid for re-election, but he had a memento from that event because they didn't take the bullet out. It remained in his body
Huh.
until he died in 1919.
Whoa.
So you're our ballistics guy. Are all bulletproof vests made of 50-page speeches?
No. It's not the way it works. Yeah, we have you mentioned the Roosevelt one, which ended up, I didn't even remember this. So a guy tried to kill Teddy Roosevelt in 1933, missed Roosevelt, but killed the
Or
mayor.
FDR.
Yeah.
Or did I say?
You said
Franklin,
Teddy.
yeah.
Tried to kill
I
Franklin.
said Teddy. No,
Yeah.
I've switched to the other
yeah.
Roosevelt here.
Okay, yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt. I'm sorry,
Franklin.
Franklin Roosevelt.
Somebody
Yeah.
tried to kill him. I don't remember
Yes.
this.
In
Yes.
1933, someone tries to kill FDR and misses him. The guy gets off 5 shots, misses him, but kills the mayor of Chicago.
I don't remember that.
I
And
think that's
injured-
why I knew that growing up in Wheaton,
Because it
Illinois.
happened
That
in
was
Chicago.
Part of our
Huh.
Illinois history, yeah.
Injured 5 bystanders too. And he said
Dang.
that he just hated all officials and everybody who is rich. And he was found guilty and he was executed.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's the one that we just looked at the crazy picture where they had apprehended him and they had one guy on one side of him and then one guy was holding a pistol on him.
Yeah. For the picture.
For the picture.
This is very
Insane
crazy.
picture.
More recent crazy ones. I didn't know about the guy who tried to assassinate Richard Nixon with a 747.
What?
Samuel Bick was his name. He was denied a small business loan from the government. It's a dude from Philadelphia, and he got focused on Nixon. He thought that basically Nixon was responsible for him not getting a small business loan. So on February 22nd, 1974, he had a plan to crash a 747 into the White House.
Wow.
Yeah, sound familiar?
It's very 9/11.
I know it. He said that he hoped he was going to force the pilot to buzz the White House, and as they got towards the White House, he was going to shoot the pilot and then try to grab the controls and steer it into the White House.
What
That
a
was his plan.
Ridiculous
Stupid
plan.
Horrible plan. Yet the guy actually got onto an airplane and shot both the pilot, I think, and the co-pilot.
Wow.
Yeah.
In air
flight?
or
No,
on the
it was
ground?
before they'd
It was
even
on the
taken
ground.
off. Yeah, he forced his way onto this Delta flight and demanded the pilots try to take off, and they were trying to reason with him, and he shot them both.
How are they going to get airborne then to
I
execute
don't
his
know.
plan?
He didn't seem like he thought that out. Then he grabs a passenger, demands that the passenger, that she fly the plane.
Wow, this guy's crazy.
So some cops hear this. They rush towards the plane, and one officer fired at him through the airplane window, which I don't even know if you can get through those with a bullet.
No.
But then Samuel Bick, he issued his own judgment to himself.
Yeah.
If
He
you know what
realized
that means.
at that moment his plan was not going to work.
Yeah, he realized around that time
Yeah, the White House
that he didn't have enough contingency plans to cover all
going
this.
to make it.
And then you had the story of Bill Clinton also had a plane crash at the White House. I'd forgotten this.
Oh, yeah.
Of a suicidal man that crashed right outside the Clintons' window.
I remember that.
And then there was another one where a dude fired, I think, a couple dozen rounds at the White House, from out in front of the White House at Clinton when Clinton was in office. That happened. And then you had Clinton, who was traveling in Manila in 1996, and a guide in the motorcade. So Clinton's about to head over this bridge, and one of his Secret Service or one of the military people driving with the motorcade hears something over the radio, and he recognizes it as some kind of code words. He could only make out the word bridge. It was in another language. Hear the word bridge and marriage, which was a code word for assassination, and realizes that the bridge they're about to travel on was loaded with explosives, and he diverts the motorcade.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
And that's wild.
You know who was
Osama
behind
bin
it?
Laden, wasn't
Osama
it?
bin Laden was behind it.
Yeah.
I'd
That's
completely
what
forgot.
kind of started
But
that
yeah.
whole thing. Yeah. Whoa.
You remember from our childhood, George, the Squeaky Fromme attempt on
That's what I
Gerald
was
Ford?
about to ask about it. He had several attempts on him, didn't he? And that was one of them.
And he was only president for like a year and a half.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ford
70s is a wild time.
Ford was hated by women, apparently, because the only two presidential assassination would-be assassins that were women both tried to kill Gerald Ford within a couple weeks of each other.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the other one's name?
The other one was a woman named, I'm certainly glad you asked me that, George,
Oh, okay.
Sarah Jane Moore.
Okay.
And she had a 38 caliber. The Squeaky Fromme one that you're talking about, that happened in September of 1975. And she, of course, famous from the Manson family, and you may have seen her in the Quentin Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She's the one who took care of the old man out at Spawn Ranch. She was his, I guess, kind of lover or hand angel. I don't know what she was to him.
The one where Tarantino again twist history and totally changes it around
a little bit.
That was a good movie.
But she goes to see Gerald Ford, and she has a .45 caliber weapon, a pistol. She pulls the trigger. The gun doesn't fire. The Secret Service agents tackle her. She's saying at the time, "It didn't go off. It didn't go off. Can you believe it? It didn't go off." As they're tackling her. And she wanted to kill Gerald Ford to make a statement about the environment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then 17 days after that, Gerald Ford was leaving a conference in San Francisco, and a woman, the aforementioned Sarah Jane Moore, had the .38 caliber pistol, and she was hoping to spark a revolution. She fires the gun, but a Vietnam veteran named Oliver Sipple noticed the gun at the last second, lunged at her, and I guess knocked it off course and saved Ford's life. Sipple said, "I'm not a hero. I'm a live coward. It's probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me my whole life." Like, dude, man, cut yourself some slack here, dude.
Man.
Saved a president.
Trump did say that in the 60 Minutes interview. He said, this has been going on in our country for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not even gotten to the half of all this. There's so much. I mean, you almost do 2 episodes on this. There was the Trump forklift assassination attempt, which I didn't even remember that. So North Dakota guy stole a forklift and got into the presidential motorcade, and his plan was to overturn the presidential limo with a forklift so he could get at Trump.
Wow.
That happened in
plans.
2017. It's
Jeez.
crazy. It's insane. But you mentioned Gerald Ford and you mentioned Squeaky Fromme, and I brought a little show and tell for the podcast here. I have a letter here, Giorgio. Look who that's from.
Well, it's to Ribby Pulse, I guess.
Yeah, which is a character that I did on radio, have done on radio for many years.
It's Ribby Pulse, by the way, but people say Pulse.
People say Pulse. And
Who's
there's
it
a
from?
letter that I have here, mailed in May of 1996 to Ribby Pulse. It came to our radio station, and it was delivered to me since I'm good friends with Ribby Pulse.
Mhm.
It was given to me. Return address, Lynette Fromme, from the Shawnee prison.
I don't remember
I don't
this.
remember that either. You've been holding out on
I
us.
have a letter here from Squeaky Fromme.
Are you kidding
the
me?
attempted assassin of Gerald Ford.
Have you told us that before?
I don't know if I have.
I don't think you
thought
have.
I had. I didn't even remember it until I was going through a few boxes a couple months ago. And I found this. I'm going, holy hell. I have a letter from Manson family member, presidential would-be assassin Squeaky Fromme.
I would think you would have had that framed and
I was
hanging
about
in
to
your
say the
office.
same thing. Yes, hanging in his living room above the fireplace.
I was about to put it in the shredder 2 nights ago, and then I realized we were doing this episode. And so I pulled it out for you guys. She writes, Dear Ribby.
She wrote, hold on. I need to process this.
She wrote it to Ribby.
She wrote it to Ribby.
Thinking he's a real guy.
Because the only thing I can assume
She heard the
is
mock
that
draft.
one of our listeners wrote her a letter as Ribby in order to provoke a response so that I would get a very confusing question mark raising letter from Squeaky Fromme.
Okay, that makes a little more sense.
Says, Ribby, what an interesting name. Will you elaborate? Myself, I'm well and still learning to be still. Oh, she's gained some. Yes. Namaste. I'm well and still learning to be still, to override killjoy thoughts whenever they are aimed against me and clearly serve no purpose, to listen, to calm, to sleep when necessary, to let the big God mind do more of the thinking, to let hate work toward and for.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
No.
To let hate work toward and for. To remember to feel in the midst of legislated numbness.
Okay.
I try to keep up with the others myself, but we'd all be better off had the others not gone down to ask the parole boards to let them up.
Meaning the Manson clan.
That is a very sad state of affairs, but I also know why they don't like prison. And how about you? Signed, Lynette Fromme.
Did you write her back?
No, I didn't write her back.
Can I see that?
Sure.
That is so wild.
Written by the hand that attempted to assassinate Gerald Ford.
Wow.
Creepy.
Wow.
Maybe she just heard a mock draft with
No,
Ribby and
she
thought,
didn't hear a mock
I'm gonna
draft
write
by
this
Ribby
guy.
and thought, I am going to write this guy.
hey, full repeat Gordo.
What? What is that?
Yeah, so this was from Florida, so she wasn't listening because I don't think back then you
We
could
didn't have an
stream
app.
us,
No, you couldn't
no
stream us
app.
back
They didn't allow apps in prison back then.
You can barely pick up our signal in Dallas, so there's no
Right.
way she could get it in Florida. Wow, that is wild.
Yes. Yeah. So show and tell and a little bit of history. So maybe our podcast listeners learned a little something today. I know I did.
Yeah, I did too.
I know I did.
I did. And can I say that, and I've told you guys this before, things are so divided these days. And when it comes to this topic of presidential assassinations, whether it's Trump in office or Biden in office, there are those group of crazies that want them out of office in any way, even if it's by assassination. And I just think everybody should realize that that would be the worst possible thing for the United States if our sitting president, whether they're Republican or Democrat or bull moose or independent, if our sitting president is murdered.
Yeah.
I just can't, no matter how much you dislike a current president, a past president, whatever, that
Vote them out. If you don't
Vote
want them
them
in,
out, yes.
do what you can to vote them out.
yes, because the chance of, especially these days, of our country descending into complete and total chaos after an event like that, I mean, it could be catastrophic.
Mhm.
It wouldn't be this cure that a lot of crazies think it would be.
Boy, and we see ourselves as being so civilized, and as you said, you got to maybe half of them.
Yeah.
Look at the history of just insane behavior by American citizens thinking that, no, this is the solution here.
Mm-hmm. And these are the ones that we know about. How many plots
Yeah.
That never
are
came to the
prevented
surface.
and never
Yeah.
came to the surface because we try to do our best to protect an elected president. So, yeah, little history lesson. Thanks to everyone who has listened to the podcast. And if you would like to email us, you can. The muserspod@gmail.com.
That's it.
Nailed it. Thanks to Peter Welton, our producer, and thanks to everyone who's been a part of this one. I'm Dale Hansen.